Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Weekly Discussion with myself and Sister Humayra. Welcome back.
Assalamu alaikum.
So, okay, the topic that we're going to discuss is kind of uncomfortable. I think it's quite taboo in the community and it's something that we don't really talk about, but I think now we'll have to. It's about sex education to be compulsory in all schools in England. Government confirmed. So basically, it will be taught at primary level from kids 4 years old, and I know it's something as Muslim parents we try to protect our kids, and it's not something that we sort of discuss. And the fact that it's been part of the curriculum, I think is quite important. As Muslims, we talk about it and talk about the effects and how we should go around it. I don't know what your thoughts are on it.
Sure. So firstly, I would say just in terms of not even from like a Muslim community perspective, but just generally the issue of teaching children as young as 4 sex education, it really brings, like, it begs the question, why? Like, why is it that
well, I think one of the arguments was because social media, everything is there. People could tap into pornographic. There's so much. There's everything out there, so they could see whatever they want to see.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, that again, there could be argument about good parenting, bad parenting, how you monitor, and how you could put like safety on the internet. However, I think they were saying that if children, it's basically teaching them to be safe. So it's
what I worry
about
about is that I'll be accepting a problem and then just working like with the problem. So the problem here is that there is an over-sexualization of our society. So with sexting and oh God, and as well as when we look at just children's movies and cartoons and the values that it kind of promotes within that, as well as advertisements and everything essentially has increased in the level of, like, when we think of even sex crimes, it's just become from A to 100, so A to Z, like it's increased quite a lot in terms of the way that it happens. And so we can see an over-sexualization of our society, or sexualization of our societies. And then it's almost like, okay, we're just accepting the problem instead of dealing with it head on. Like, okay, what can we do to change the way that society is, to change the way that this is, because essentially sex is promoted in every sector of life, and rather than us saying, okay, is that productive for a society, is that productive for our communities, we're saying, let's teach our children it.
I don't think we have much control over which way the whole society
but
has.
This is something
but
that
with this, I think we do, because as parents, I know with certain schools the rules are different, but I think as parents we have a say on how much and how it should be taught. So my thing is, I mean, I see the both side. I'm not happy with the fact that a kid at that young should be taught about sex education, because they're too young to understand, and the danger of that is they probably would want to try it out and see what happens. However, the other side, I do understand the fact that it's important that they need to be aware of this is what is happening, and this is basically, because I know every time my kids watch TV, they're like, oh no, if they get married, they're going to kiss, because that's the notion of what they have, and that's what they see. I mean, now, the society we live in, I know my daughter was crazy of Frozen, and then I think the next episode, next series of Frozen will be a gay, she becomes gay, and apparently there was rumors that it would be a hijabi girl. So I'm just thinking, I don't want her to watch it. Do you get it? So, I mean, are we protecting our kids by moving it away from them, or the fact that as soon as they go into school, they will see it, they will hear other people talk about it? So do we, as Muslims, be parents, be the community, do something about it? And if we do address them, how do you address them?
I think, I mean, I won't be able to sit here and give you like a solution to how we address this problem. I do think as a community we need to, you know, maybe have this as a discussion that whether it's a conference or however we go about doing this, is a discussion that we as a community need to have, because we have very different values to the ones that, to the society that we're living in. But the thing about what you said about, you know, we don't have much influence on society. Essentially, we are part of society and we're part of the people we're around. And I think this is a discussion that we should raise with teachers, with students, young students, with basically our community members, our neighbours, our friends, everyone. Raise this as a discussion as, you know, is this a problem, and are we solving it correctly as a society? And if it's not being solved,
I remember a couple of years ago when they originally introduced this whole thing about, I remember obviously when I went to school, that was ages ago, the whole curriculum was taught when I was 11. So when my son was, I got a letter from school saying that they're going to teach it in school at 5 years old, and it's part of science, but you can't take him out. You can't take him out. So therefore, they have to, and if they don't, they missed out. Like, basically, I know there's a big hoo-ha, but even though we say as collectively we'll do something, and we got involved with school governors, the parents got involved, it wasn't only Muslim parents that had concern, other parents had concerns too. So, but then we couldn't really do anything. It was a school policy, and if they didn't take part in curriculum, and that's how clear-cut it was. I mean, in terms of the content, you could view what they were watching. They show you, I know they show you obviously everything in like child bite size, but the fact is, I think, do you feel like as Muslim we should start teaching our kids? Because I mean, most of the Muslim kids think kids come from hospital. So every child comes from hospital. How does a child come? They don't know. And as parents, I don't think we do teach that. And I think it's because of the way, I guess it's back to our upbringing, the way we were brought up, and the way the understanding we had. And even though we say we're not like our parents, there's certain thoughts. Even till today, my kids believe they came from hospital. How did they come from hospital? Again, that isn't sort of like discussed. So do you think as parents we're failing by not sort of discussing certain things? Because if they get that from school, they're obviously going to come back and say, do you know what? And if they feel like they can't talk to you, they'll still talk about it. I think
we definitely have to have an open relationship with, for me, my younger siblings, and for parents, their children. This is something that, because school will teach you many things that as we as Muslims will generally just not agree with. And I think generally, even if you weren't Muslim, there'd be things that school teaches students you just won't agree with, and so you should have an open relationship with the family. But in terms of should Muslims now teach their children and just adopt kind of what the school is doing, but in our Islamic kind of way? Well, Islam already had a way of teaching this at a correct time, meaning when you reach puberty, that's the kind of discussion we have. When you're about to get married, that's the kind of discussion we have. But so now everything comes at stages, and now I understand what you mean. Like, now we are living in a society that's saying we are going to teach 4-year-old children, and this is what I mean. Like, how much
part
of
an
opinion?
I mean, as like Department of Education, they said they will work with teachers, parents, safeguarding experts to develop age-appropriate content for all key stage. So I'm sure they will look into it. There is another section in the article saying that parents will continue to have rights to withdraw their children from sex education classes. However, and schools are given flexibility over the subject that is delivered. That isn't completely true. I know with the school that my kids go to, we did raise a concern. They weren't having it. Considering the head teacher is a Muslim head teacher, so he's like, no, they have to take part. I guess if your kids go to faith school, you're lucky. It's not, even if it's in the curriculum, it'll be the most easiest way of understanding. But that's not the only thing, though. I think at the moment, the rise of gays, lesbian is such a big thing, and kids are taught that. Oh, my uncle has another uncle that he's together with, and I know the first book that was like sort of spoken about was written in Pakistan, and it was sort of like someone said it was put in people's schools bag, but I don't know how much of that is true. But however, that was the story then. So if a child comes home and says this is natural, then they've got taught this. Do you how do you deal with issues like that?
Yeah, so again, I think like as members of our community, these are questions we definitely need to raise, and raise it publicly. So again, with your situation where basically this school didn't move, they didn't budge, I would really recommend take it to the media. Like, we have that as a avenue for us. I know it's always against us, but there are independent Muslim outlets that will take up our issues, and we should definitely use them. 5 Pillars is one of them that I regularly keep up to date with, and so we should recognize that we do have the ability to raise certain issues. I know, like, immediately as soon as we do, we're like labeled extreme and whatnot. But the point is, we still have to speak because we have a duty from our deen and for our community and our values. I
mean, they do say like refuge. I don't know if you've heard of refuge. It's like one of the biggest domestic violence women's project out there. There will be one of the campaigners were quoted to say that it will help reduce domestic violence in the future. So I don't know how that would work, but however, according to her, and that was in the Independent, and she said, well, basically, it would help reduce domestic violence.
I think the issue here is, like, it's interesting she said that, because I think with domestic violence, as well as just violence towards the opposite gender and discrimination towards the opposite gender, I think it comes from, it does start to develop in a very young age, in the way that we view each other. And I do think that is what we need to be teaching from a very young age. How do you interact with the opposite gender? What is our relationship? What conversations do we have? How do we respect the opposite gender? How do we respect ourselves? These are the values we should be teaching children, not like 4-year-old, here, sit down and here.
Well, again, I mean, they did say, it's quite similar to what you were saying there, but it says that fully address sexual and mental health crisis amongst young people. We will need to ensure that there are legislation around SRE has a strong emphasis on neglected topics such as sexual health, gay, lesbian relationship, in order to tackle high rate of STI among young people, ongoing homophobia, and in school corridor. However, even with their arguments, I don't think it's something that they should be taught at that level. Maybe later on. And I think that, I mean, during our time back in the 90s, it was taught when you were what, 10, 11, which I personally believed it was a good time. I guess there are more access to internet, but again, that's back to parenting, how you control the internet, what they watch. With TV, again, I think those things can be monitored, and those things can be the kids can be protective. The fact that I personally believe, I don't know how you feel, I personally believe 4-year-old is too young, 5, 6, 7, even 7, it's nor here nor there, because they don't even know themselves. They don't even understand their own body. Forget about understand the whole relationship.
Yeah, honestly, like,
so
what were we discussing at that age? Crayons and like who colored the biggest picture, the best picture. And, you know,
I don't even remember what we were discussing. That many years.
It's like, you know, an age where I mean, again, I go back to why do we need to have these discussions? It is because there is a problem in our community. You know, like we've said, you know, it goes back to parenting and, you know, protecting the children. But how much can we protect our children when the first thing they walk out and see is a woman, you know, advertising clothes, her undergarments, and then being told that this is completely normal. How much of this is normal is something that we do have to question.
That, I think, you don't have to look at billboard. I mean, that's something you see in the beach. But again, I think those are the things that has been part of our daily life. And I think as parents, we've sort of come this far.
But what I'm going back to with this is that
your capitalist argument.
No. Of course, because it's a sexualization of the women's body. It's an objectification of the women's body. And so,
but now it's not only women, though. Now it's men's too.
Men too, definitely. You see that advertised. He's strong and dark, and it's actually explaining, like, I don't know,
you're on your own.
But it is objectification of basically human beings, essentially. And so what that does is it takes down the value of the opposite gender, of the human being. And then from a young age, if you're brought up with this understanding, well, I can just, you know, use this person like my toy because it's just another, you know, item for me to use and abuse. Then when you grow older, what kind of views do you have towards each other? And that is the problem that we have today in terms of domestic violence and the way that women are mistreated.
They did do a YouGov poll from Bernardo's Children's Charity earlier this year, and they found 74% from 11 to 15-year-olds said that they would feel safer if they were taught about sex and relationship in school. That's 11 to 15-year-old, which is understandable. So 94% said they agreed it was important for them to understand the risk and danger of being online in order to stay safe. Yes, I agree with that age group. It is. They need to know. However, I think, then again, I guess it's just...
I think my point here is that we need to now have a wider discussion. Like, it's not fair on us to, as like members of the community, not just Muslims, I'm just talking generally, as people who, and especially for parents, who are bringing up children and then they're having, you know, things that are personal being taught by the state in a way that doesn't deal with the problems that exist. And so as parents, because the reality is that not only are you bringing up your children, the government is bringing up your children, and so this is a discussion that needs to be had on a wider scale. We need to discuss with each other. We need to go more public on this and discuss, well, are we living in a productive society, and is this the way of dealing with
it's true, because I mean, it's a social problem, and I think they need to take people's religion in consideration, and they should also think about their child welfare. It's too young to talk about sex or anything of that matter, because I think they're young, and it's basically, for me, I think it's taking away their childhood away from them, their innocence, and the fact that as soon as you find out something, you want to explore, you want to find out a bit more. And I personally think, I might be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, that they won't sort of experiment to find out what's happening. But I'm gonna move away from this article because
it's been a really interesting discussion.
Yeah, honestly. I mean, it's kind of silly from my understanding, but then again, you've got most of the government bodies actually thinking that it is quite important that they understand it at that age. However, there was this other story. It was in the Lancashire Telegraph. It was about Blackburn child cruelty couple jail for 5 years. So basically, there was a couple who victimized one of their twin, and and the other children were taken away. I mean, they got 5 years. But the things that they did to their child was horrific. I can't imagine, or I can't get myself around to the fact that parents could do that inflict that much pain on a child. How did you feel?
I'd actually like you to read out some sections of it, because it's just, I've read so many articles
today. Okay, well basically they said one of the child had pneumonia, and that was back in June 2009, and tested. This is how it comes out, because he had pneumonia, and when they went to test it, they revealed they had multiple fracture, and his brain was bleeding internally, and he had nose injury, and there was there was a continuous placing clothes peg on the tiny baby. Nafisa is a girl, the mother, and Nafisa is 22, Muhammad is 29. They both were convicted in July. The judge said, "You are so young that either together or independent you may have 20 years or more when children may be born." But I think they had some mental issues, or whatever it was, or they weren't fit enough to look after the kids, and again perhaps they were on their own. But basically Nafisa was pregnant with a fourth child, and that time it was twin, and she loved Muhammad deeply and doesn't seek to blame him. So basically she's not blaming her husband for all the cruelty, so she and her husband feel like they were innocent, and the fact that even though they abused their child. Yeah, which makes no sense. So she's lost all 4 kids. So that wasn't her only child. She had 4 other children. One was death, and the last child was taken away a minute after the birth. So even though I think the big bit that I couldn't get around myself is the fact that if you weren't capable of looking after kids, why are you having so many? And in this time of when there's contraception and everything else, so why would you do that? And then there was that severe punishment. So basically, I mean,
it was another abuse case. We've seen Baby P before, which was really, really big. Where I guess in this situation of Baby P, it was more to do with social services letting down
but this
children,
is parents.
and this is parents. Yeah.
So which is because really for a child, where do you go for comfort? It's your mum. If not your mom, then your dad. So that's your comfort zone. But if that's your abuser, then what do you do?
Yeah, I know. It's honestly really, really scary, and it's heartbreaking. I can't even get the words out clearly to say how is it that we understand our relationship with each other that we can't even understand that with children you have to bring them up by nurturing them, not abusing them, and it's terrifying to hear this case. Because it just feels like it just went on, because she didn't, as you said, didn't only have one child, she had many.
Yeah. I mean, well, she's been punished for it, and I'm glad all the other kids have been taken away from her. So, which obviously probably protecting the kids, and I think this is probably I think this is the first time it feels like I'm glad the kid has been taken away.
Because usually you're right, and usually what we have is
it becomes worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, inshallah, let's hope it all happens for the best. But this story is kind of amusing, but it has to be said. It's about a Saudi man marries basically 4 wives, they believe it's their God-given right to have 4 wives. But however, in this situation, the women were quite happy to be part of this, being the 4 wives. So basically, one's a student, one's a teacher, one's a supervisor, and one's a principal, and they're all from the same school.
Yeah.
And I think the bit that caught my attention was the fact that all the 4 women, they were quite happy living together and sort of sharing that one man. I know we always hear about the fact that yes, men talk about having 4 wives, but then the argument is you have to treat them equally, and there are reasons why you have 4 wives, and you always hear the West sort of bashing the whole idea and the notion of like having it. But in this case, all women were happy, and they were all from the same school, and they were getting along fine. How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, again, an area I can't comment on.
Yeah, no, the fact that they're quite happy. Yeah, I mean, I actually had to look at it like a few times to actually think,
are they really?
Yeah, were they really happy? Because I know even during the Prophet time, they did say like, Prophet's wife used to get jealous and stuff like that. There were like incidents that has been like sort of people have said, which is normal as human nature. As women, we are in a certain way, we do. But the fact that obviously it's a story, it is glorified, and the fact that they're living together, and the fact that they were from the same school, I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, I think in terms of the way that West views the concept of a man having 4 wives, which is something that Islam gave them the right to, you just with all of the conditions. But when you see that, you just think like when I read this article, I thought, well, these are educated women. They understand what they're getting themselves into, and they
do clearly say these. All 3 wives have learned to accept the others and live peacefully with the other wives.
It's almost, this is why again, like it's almost like a non-discussion, but it's also an amazing topic to raise when you hear this. Basically, the narrative that's pushed by the West, and the interesting thing is, whilst here in the West we hear stuff like okay, 4 wives is so how can you do that to your woman and whatnot. You still have the concept of girlfriends and mistresses, and all of these situations still go on under the carpet. Whereas Islam, what it tries to do is secure the woman's relationship as a human being. Which is very, very interesting.
Do you not feel it's going to be an awkward situation? I mean,
I wouldn't be able to say.
Even the thought of like these women live together in the same house, and when they go out to work, they're in the same place, like they're working together. Could you imagine when they had to do work, get away and stuff like that? They were like, wherever they go, these women are together. I mean,
I think that's why, like, for us, this concept is so foreign, but this is part of many cultures, whereas Islam put a limit on a condition like 4 wives. And we know again this is something that the Prophet ﷺ, he had many wives, more than 4 at once, and there was a healthy relationship. And yes, I completely agree, they had their problems, and again natural as human beings.
It's human.
And this is something that Islam says, this is what the man has to do with. This is a responsibility he took on, and he deals with that responsibility. So again, Islam looks at this social aspect of relationships as something of security for women as well as men, and I think in some sense it's a liberating factor. It was just an interesting article to read. I didn't go too much into imagining like what is it like when they go off to holidays and stuff like that. You're saying here.
No, but I did. I guess I'm married. That's why I see things certainly slightly different from the way you would see things. But however, I know they were saying they had no arguments. There was no jealousy. I find that hard to believe. I know I'm trying to analyze the story. I find that hard to believe. I mean, me being a woman, we do have that ounce of jealousy in us. We all, regardless, we all try to perfect ourselves, and we all try to be the best human being. However, as women, I think we do have that. But I think you got saved. I was going to ask you something, but we have to go on a break. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll see you in a minute. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.